You're listening to For the Fighter in You.
This particular modality we're going to talk about today, I really do think you're going to be shaking your head like, why don't we know about this, given all of the positive outcomes they're having with it? First, I'll say just a couple of things that they're having positive outcomes with, and then I'll tell you what it is, and then we'll meet the very special person we're going to be chatting with about it today. So how about something that positively affects Alzheimer's, dementia, TBI, concussions, Parkinson's, the old man brain like I have, the aging brain, PTSD, sleep, and countless others positively affected, not just positive, like hugely positively affected. On this episode of The Fighter and You, we're going to visit with Jordan Hamlin and explore Trans Cranial Photo Bio-Modulation. That's a mouthful. It just means light therapy. Jordan graduated with a BA in psychology from Georgia State University. She started working as a neurofeedback technician in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina in 2016 and received her BCIA certification for neurofeedback in 2022 and an IQCB certification. She's going to tell us what these mean. Certification, an EEG Tech or EEG-T in 2025. She's also a certified Heartmath trainer. I'm familiar with that from when I lived in Los Angeles. She's been working with and researching the impact of light on the human body since 2020, with a focus on how light modulates EEG activity. Jordan started working for Neuronic in January 2024 and is presently a consultant and researcher for the company, helping end users and providers understand light and develop protocols for individual wellness goals. Jordan, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to visit with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I don't think we'll forget our names.
Exactly, exactly.
It'd be pretty bad if we forgot our collective names here. So I guess we could probably start from the beginning and maybe tell us what is light therapy and why you were so attracted to it in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. So light therapy does cover a wide range, going kind of from visible light into the light ranges that we can't see. And a lot of times when we're talking about photobiomodulation, it's usually referring to that red and near infrared light range. Part of what got me into it actually at the time I was working with visual light, flashing visual light as an alternative to hallucinogens, so a non-substance related experience. And it was really interesting to be able to see that impact alone. And that research kind of led me into the infrared light realm and what it could do for the body. And I started using light for the gut, actually. I had mold toxicity and nothing was really helping with it. You know, I tried all the things, did all the diets, did all the supplements. I just still felt pretty stuck with it. But once I started using the infrared light for my stomach, I could eat more foods that I hadn't been able to for years. I started feeling better and clearer in my cognition. And I thought, okay, well, there has to be other things out there too. And that's why I ended up with Neuronic and the helmet and using infrared light for the brain as well.
This is very exciting to me because the gut is one of my issues. I've on again and off again had overgrowth of Candida albicans, and it's brutal. You know, like there's times I'm okay, and then there's times it's a disaster. There's times I can't even eat because if I eat, I will literally shut down. I like any blood glucose at all just shuts me down. And so the gut is a real big issue for me as well. I definitely don't let me not revisit that. Um, and I want to get to all the different intersections of all these different issues that we talked about earlier that I mentioned. And so the actual, and this might be difficult to explain, but if anyone can do it, it's you. The actual mechanics of how it works. I understand there's different frequencies, and then the different frequencies do different things in the body. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely when you're looking at these different wavelengths of light, kind of the longer the wavelength is, the more it can penetrate through. So you'll look at, for instance, like blue light is used sometimes for skin conditions or other things. It really can only penetrate about skin deep. Whereas when you're getting into like near infrared light, it's a lot longer of a wavelength. So we can penetrate a lot more deeply into the body. All of these light frequencies have an ability to modulate the biological processes. In particular, with red and near infrared light, we're really seeing a decrease in inflammation, an increase in circulation, and an increase in production of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is a really long word that just basically refers to the molecule in our body that helps us to do everything that we do. Anytime you're moving your fingers or we're talking right now, we're using ATP to be able to do this. So having this improvement in cellular energy can allow us to really start to recover and start to do those things that we maybe lost track of doing. And, like shutting down with your gut. I mean, that can happen from all sorts of things, like head injuries or sleep deprivation or, diseases. So having something that can improve this cellular energy, you can start really getting back to who you used to be.
Wow. Yes. So energy, and that really strikes home because it feels like a lack of when I crash. It's almost like I'll be staring at the computer screen and one of the kids will come into the office. Dad, what are you doing? And I'll be like, oh, and I know I was gonna go somewhere. I was gonna open up a screen and I just went down. Like an algorithm caught my attention. I went like 2 or 3 minutes into that and then I shut down. And some of the things I was studying, they're saying that the mitochondria, which are like little mini generators, they're kind of what generates the energy. So can you tell us about the intersection of infrared, that healing uh, wavelength with mitochondria?
Yeah, absolutely. So inside of our mitochondria, we have chromophores, which are receptive to light. And in particular, cytochrome C oxidase really is receptive to that red and near infrared light spectrum. Cytochrome C oxidase is the precursor to ATP production. So when the mitochondria is sluggish, when it's not getting enough oxygen, it's just not going to be producing this energy, and that will build over time to be producing less and less and less energy. When you have something like infrared light that can come in and actually help to activate these molecules, then you can start increasing that ATP production. This is what flows through the body to be able to help decrease inflammation. It'll knock nitric oxide, which is blocking these cells, trying to protect them in those times of need, but then can be damaging when it's continuous. It'll knock the nitric oxide out, and so then you can have greater ability to get more oxygen to more cells, which creates more ATP, which allows for this process to kind of continue on a positive track versus that blocking of the oxygen, the inflammatory responses that we see in some of these injuries or diagnoses.
What you're saying is fascinating because nitric oxide is an oxygen, right? It's like oxidant. Like we take antioxidants, but I actually have one of my coaches, one of my weightlifting coaches said, because I was jumping into the cold, doing my cold plunge after I lift, and he said, no, 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 give yourself a couple hours. I said, why? I said, let your body jump start, right? Like let it. The oxidants aren't necessarily bad. It's finding that sort of yin yang balance. Yes.
Yeah, the homeostasis, exactly. So, it gets like reactive oxygen species, they get a really bad rep because we think about them in terms of cancer, but it's actually a normal part of our biological processes, just trying to get us back to that regulated state. The issues come in when things are just chronic and they're going on long term. That's where we have more of those problems and things like repeated head injuries or again, some of these neurodegeneration conditions. That's where you're seeing a lot of this chronic inflammation. And then you get more cell death that comes from that if it's not taken care of.
Thank you for that perfect segue. I want to get into the neural aspects of this because I think pretty much everybody is going to be affected at some point, especially if they make it into their 70s, 80s, and 90s with neurological issues, one way or another. I'm definitely dealing with those. I was in the military, I was in artillery, and my head got batted around. I was in martial arts, and now I'm a drummer. So it's just like creating perfect storm after perfect storm after perfect storm, and now I'm paying the price. Can you can we talk about the different neurological issues like Alzheimer's, TBI, PTSD, in the intersection of how these different, well, tell me which wavelengths are the most therapeutic for the brain and maybe just sort of how they interface.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in general, when we're really trying to target the brain, unlike the other areas of our body, there's a lot of layers you're getting through. We have hair, and then your skull, you have the meninges, then we're getting into the brain tissue. It's a lot of things. So, these longer wavelengths are a lot more suited for it. In general, you'll see a lot of these devices will use 810 nanometers or 1060 or 1070 nanometers. So, these frequencies do seem to be the most beneficial, whereas so around 700 nanometers isn't quite as good. So we're getting a lot better penetration when you're working in that 800-ish nanometers or 1,000-ish nanometers. And then those are able to help for these different diseases. Really, they come from different things. PTSD obviously comes from its own thing, or Alzheimer's comes from it. While they all have their different etiologies, the real root cause that comes up is inflammation. So it's this lasting inflammation that's occurring, and then we're getting areas that are just shutting down. You have more of this neuronal death, and then you're getting that, impairment in cognition or memory or whatever it might be. So what the photobiomodulation can do at its core is decreasing inflammation. So once we can start to reverse that process, then you can start to regain some of these functions. In particular, studies this year have shown that we see a lot of microglia and macrophage activation or overactivation in the inflammatory side. Again, in the short term, that's a really protective thing. If you just hit your head, we need to have something that comes up and can kind of protect that area. But in the long term, then it can be really detrimental. What photobiomodulation has been shown to do is reverse or flip the polarity of the microglia and macrophages from the M1 inflammatory kind to the M2 anti-inflammatory kind. This is where you really get that huge impact on it so that we're changing the actual activity of these immune cells in the brain. So it's a pretty massively impactful thing. And all of that, again, has a downstream effect that's positive. Once you start switching the polarity of each of these microglia and macrophages, you're also starting to improve more of that circulation and decrease more inflammation.
It almost sounds like you're flipping something. So it's actually more than just an addition or a subtraction. It's like when I'm at my son's football games and I say pick six, if they're right on, he's on defense and they're like, and his opponents are 3 yards away, that's pretty much 6 points, right? Unless he picks it off and runs it all the way back. Now it's really a 12-point flip. Because so you're taking something that was negative and you're making it into a positive.
Right, right. And it's showing up in all of these things. I mean, there's research that shows with it in PTSD or in repeated head injuries or in neurodegeneration or, all of these things. And to be honest, how many people haven't had at least one concussion or bop on their head at some point in life? And once you have that, there's over a 10% chance that you're going to have a second one.
Whoa. Now, can you tell us the difference between a nanometer and a hertz? I see up here 40 Hz makes gamma, which is a stimulating, and 10 Hz makes alpha, which is gentle. How does that translate? You had mentioned nanometers as the marker. How does that
Yeah, yeah.
translate?
So when we're talking about nanometers, that's the actual wavelength of the light. So in terms of like 1070 nanometers is what Neuronic works in. That's the wavelength of the light that we're using. And then the hertz that you're mentioning is actually how often that the light is flashing per second. Interestingly enough, it has a different impact on our biology when you have constant light versus when you start pulsing the light and flashing it. So one of the things that they've been showing is that with that 40 hertz in particular, it's really been researched, especially around Alzheimer's and dementia. It seems to have something where not only is it flipping the microglia and macrophages to that anti-inflammatory state, but it's actually helping direct them to areas of protein aggregates that are in the brain to help be able to clear them out. So it's really influencing behavior in terms of the actual polarity, but also how it's moving through our brains. It's a fascinating difference to be able to see just in, be from flashing a light.
Yeah, it's wild. And I intuitively know this is accurate. First off, you don't need to use an intuition. There's a ton of science on this. I looked at the science. It's all double blinded, triple blinded, peer reviewed. There's a lot of science on this that this is efficacious. But I remember just as anecdotally working at a corporation in the 80s and 90s, and every time I'd go into the lunchroom, I would get really sick. I'd get a really bad headache. It was very, very consistent. and I couldn't figure it out. Now, in retrospect, I remember they had these fluorescent lights on the roof, and they were flat. They were always buzzing because they were always dying. Like there were 9 or 10 of them in various states of death, and so they were flickering, and the flickering gave me the nastiest headache.
Mhm.
What is that?
Yeah, yeah. So that is just from the other side of it is, once we're also processing light from our eyes, there's always some kind of flicker rate, but usually we can't actually visualize it because it's outside of the spectrum that we could process in. But yeah, once you're starting to get to that point of, this dying of these lights, yeah, you can start to notice it and it's unsettling to have. It's not a normal thing that we kind of experience like with the sun, it's up and then it's down, maybe clouds go over it, but you don't quite have that same sort of like constant flickering with it. Versus when you're putting it like on the head and using infrared light, you can't see that. And it's not, going through those same pathways since it's not visual light. So it's something that we don't have those same sorts of experiences with.
It's interesting. Sometimes I can see the red, like I have an infrared sauna, and I can see the red. And then sometimes I can't see the red. Are they both infrared, even though, and what's the difference between the ones I can see and the ones I can't?
Yeah, so we kind of think about the cutoff being around that 700 nanometers for it becoming into the infrared or near infrared spectrum, but some people can actually see further into that. So I know I have like an 810 light pad that I use for my gut, and that's one that I can kind of faintly see the light still. Our eyes are still able to process it. The further that you get, then it becomes a lot less likely. So like in that 1070 nanometer range, it really does just seem invisible. There are thankfully filters that exist that you can just purchase off of Amazon for pretty cheap that you can use to be able to see them. And actually, some old phone cameras will also be able to see them as well.
It's interesting you said that because what I see a lot now is people wearing different colored glasses. Like sometimes they're red and sometimes they're blue. Why are they doing that? It looks weird, but I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. So actually, one of the things I've been really excited about that's come up in the past couple years is using more of these green or yellowish glasses for migraines. It seems to be something that one, green is the easiest color for our eyes to be able to perceive, which makes sense. Nature is green. It's what we derived from. But then also, yeah, it has this impact of helping to calm those sort of overactivated pain signals in the brain. But there's also ones, yeah, that are coming on about those contrasting colors, like you mentioned. There's definitely a place that was in Australia that's been using that for learning disabilities. So these people are coming in and testing like they have a learning disability, and all they're doing is just putting colored glasses on them, and it's like everything goes back to normal. It's amazing.
That I have so many scientific questions, but I think I'd like to go down this road because this is always the road this was what was making me shake my head when I first discovered light therapy. Anecdotes. I'm sure you've got a bunch of them. What are some of the ones that stick out in your mind that just made you say, "Oh, I'm dedicating my work life to this"?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think myself is a really great example. While I did have, started out with use for the gut, I did have traumatic brain injuries when I was 18 and 19 years old. I had a lot of issues with memory, a lot of issues with fatigue, and just kind of getting by. I was drinking like 6 cups of coffee a day, 'cause-
For those who are just listening to us, I just lifted up a huge Yeti because I have to drink like a gallon of coffee just to be functional. It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's nothing that's, out there by any doctor's standards. Like I had healed all the way as far as I could. So I had accepted this as being part of my life. And it had been a decade since I had those injuries. Nothing had really changed. I was okay with just, I'm going to have to write notes on my hands and carry around a notebook all the time. And once I got my Neuronic helmet, I was planning to use it with my clients in the clinic, but I always want to try something myself first. So I started using the helmet, and it was about 3 months into it my friends and my family started reporting to me how good my memory was. And I thought it was a joke. And up until enough people had said it, that I started realizing, oh my gosh, I don't have notes on my hands anymore. Like I'm not carrying around a little notebook. I'm able to just actually remember things between these rooms. And then I looked at my coffee intake. I was down to 1 cup a day. Like it was this massive shift from where I had been. So that was definitely my buy-in moment of, oh my gosh, this can do so many more things than people realize, because a lot of the research is around Alzheimer's or dementia. But, I'm in my 30s. I'm not really thinking about that, but I definitely didn't think I could heal from something, an injury that had happened over a decade ago. So it was hugely, hugely impactful. So obviously, I think, that was a big buy-in. But it's been really amazing to see these differences. We have children that we've worked with that are, age like 6. They were nonverbal. They weren't able to properly communicate their needs. Or their wants. If they did communicate, they would make mistakes like calling teachers the wrong names. After doing just a couple of sessions with the helmet, they were able to properly name their teachers on the first try. They were able to explicitly ask for what their needs were, like a drink of water or a snack. Things that just like had never been the case for this child. So it was really amazing to be able to see. And then, yeah, hearing people say like they get their life back, or they get their wife back or their husband back, something that, these people have kind of lost. They've tried these other interventions. Nothing's really been making a difference, but now they're starting to see the personality again. Like one of the clients that I have, he had gotten to the point with his memory where he didn't want to speak anymore. So he would go to a group, but he would just sit in the back and he wouldn't communicate with anyone else. He was getting to the point where he didn't even want to go to this group and he didn't even really interact with his children as much. But now, since he's been using the helmet, he started going to the group and interacting. He's even gotten up and done talks in front of them. Like he's been interacting with his children again. I mean, just incredible things that he hadn't been doing for years.
The helmet, you've mentioned this helmet several times. Can you tell us what it looks like, what the functionality is, and you know, and how it works? Like you said, if it's on the head, it has to go through the hair and the skull. Can light penetrate? The skull is pretty formidable. It
Yeah,
actually gets to the
actually,
brain. The light actually can get to the brain.
yes, yeah. And actually the hair is the bigger issue, surprisingly enough. So yeah, even though there is quite a bit that can still be lost with it, you can still have some penetration through, and it's enough to be making these differences. So we adopted a helmet design so that we could cover as much of the head as possible. One that's obviously helpful for any of these neurodegeneration. You need to kind of have the whole head. But two, it's also great for some of these sensory processing issues like autism spectrum. Having something that's just normal that feels, like a bike helmet or something, it's a little easier to get that buy-in for it. So we use about 300 LEDs in our devices that we offer, and they operate in that 1070 nanometer range. We went with LEDs because these have a lot less heating factor versus like lasers, which is where you see a lot more of those being that medical grade because they can potentially have damage. LEDs don't carry that same risk. So it's a good at-home device for it. And our device does offer a lot of customization with it. So we have presets. These are around the most researched things. You mentioned that 40 hertz, but we also have that 10 hertz and the constant light as well. So that can be helpful for the majority of cases. But we wanted to give this extra ability to customize potential pulse rates in case new research comes out. Who knows? Like this field is still emerging, and next year they could come out and say 213 hertz is the cure for everything. Great. We would love for you to be able to do that with your device, not have to go out and seek out another one. Our devices also have the ability to adjust in power. So while there's a lot of talk out there about, oh, you need to have so much power and everybody kind of fits in this box in 20 minutes and all of these things, brains are unique and people are unique. So it really does vary. For instance, I work with some like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. They tend to be really, really sensitive. And I had this really amazing case from a client. She did a maximum of 1 minute and 45 seconds as the most that she could ever tolerate. And it literally helped to stop her seizures. She was able to start working again, and she was able to start walking again on her own 2 miles a day after being in a wheelchair. So it was a huge difference, but it just goes to show how much variance can go on with people being, individuals. So having this ability to customize it really makes it better for anybody to be able to use, not just for the single person who fits in a box.
That was what I was going to ask you is what the treatment protocol is that you would recommend, especially for cognitive support, brain health, recovery. I know sleep is a humongous factor. Talk to us about the intersection of the light therapy with sleep.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been really neat to see some of this research with it. What they showed, one of the studies that they did is they had their participants use a helmet or a sham device for 6 days, just for 6 days, and just looking at their sleep quality over it. So each of these sessions were around 10 to 12 minutes. And the ones who had the active treatment, everybody was doing the same for the first 4 days, and it was day five. You saw a marked improvement in the sleep quality for these individuals who are getting the active intervention. I also see a help for it with individuals with anxiety. So really difficult time of just kind of winding down at the end of the night and then getting into bed. Having the use of the helmet can be helpful for decreasing that anxiety and then helping them shift into it. That's one of the programs that we have on the device is that 10 hertz, the piece. This is something kind of intended to help downshift the nervous system to be able to get into that more sleep mode. We're actually running a larger scale study right now in Europe, looking at this as well. So, which I'm really excited to see the results from.
So the user does have the ability to customize the pulse, the frequency, the power level, the duration. All of those are like set. So you're going to send it preset based on the vast majority of what people need, but the person can adjust power levels, frequencies, pulse, all that.
Exactly, exactly. So, like the 40 hertz program we mentioned about cognition too, I definitely recommend using kind of that constant light and the 40 hertz. Those have the most research around them for supporting cognition. But, at the beginning, for our presets, then we start with just 6 minutes for that 40 hertz. It's a really good starting point for people. Most people tolerate that really easily, but especially once you start using the device more, maybe you need a little bit more time. So you have that ability to start adjusting it based on your needs.
So we did kind of a light touch. We talked a little bit about the science. Would it be fair to go through and I'll name different ailments and then you just hit me with the intersection what someone should do? Would that be
Sure.
fair? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right, so let's visit neuro for a while. Alzheimer's.
Yeah, Alzheimer's definitely the most research is around using that constant light in the 40 hertz. I have found that in general with Alzheimer's and neurodegeneration, they usually deal with a lot higher doses, which is just either, the amount of light that you're receiving and the time. They do a lot better with some of these higher doses. So a lot of times I do use about 30 minutes for those clients with the combination of using the glow and the 40 hertz. These have the two different impacts with the 40 hertz mostly interacting more with microglia and macrophages. The constant light interacts more with the astrocyte activity, as well as helping to strengthen the blood-brain barrier. So we're kind of hitting it at two different angles to be able to help these people start to recover some of their functioning.
Phew, that's awesome. Do you have anecdotes in that space?
Yeah, we actually have just finished our mild cognitive impairment early Alzheimer's study. And it's been really amazing to see the difference. There was a woman that we were talking with, and for 9 years she hasn't been able to do anything, including like clean the house, just little things, that we don't really think about as being that great or exciting or fun. But if you can't actually do them, it becomes a lot bigger of a deal. After using our device for 3 months, she was reporting, yeah, she started doing this of being able to sweep the house again. She's been able to cook again, and now she's being able to interact with her partner again as well. Just, things that she had given up on essentially beforehand, which is amazing to see. I'm definitely seeing people who have an easier time in recalling, names that they know or places that they've been, which is huge, but mostly I think it's bigger on the social side. People feeling like they can do things with their families again. It's been really, really amazing to see.
That must be so rewarding. It
Yeah,
must be
yeah.
so rich. No, that's when you really like what you're doing for a living, when you see that kind of thing. It's just like, what about our soldiers who are coming home, defended us, risked their lives, and have PTSD or they have TBI or concussions?
Yeah, so, looking at PTSD in particular, one of the markers of it is decreased prefrontal cortex activity. You don't need to be using your prefrontal cortex for planning and future thinking if you're trying to protect yourself and stay safe. So we see this really like decrease in that activity, and that kind of prevents somebody from being able to move forward if you can't really be thinking about it. So having the helmet that can help to activate these underactive areas can help to have sort of a top-down regulation. Okay, actually, no, this isn't a threat. we're actually okay, and then we can start to be able to move through it. Does also seem to be helpful for adjusting the central nervous system from being in that kind of activated state into the less so. And for instance, there's a firefighters that we're working with in Alaska right now. Um, and obviously, you're kind of on high alert all the time. It's what you do. So seeing this shift that the firefighters have had where they've tried all these other interventions and all these other things, the helmet was actually the first thing that got him to be able to shift that nervous system so that he could start sleeping through the night rather than just being awake and being hypervigilant. In terms of those concussion recovery or traumatic brain injury, again, once you have one, you can have a lot of these inflammatory markers, but if you start having multiple, there's a way, way higher chance of this occurring. When you have that lasting inflammation, you have a lot more of that neuronal cell death, and then you get impairments in functioning. Having something that can help to reverse that inflammatory response, in particular, looking at some of these markers like interleukin 6 or IL-6 and TNF-A or the tumor necrosis factor alpha. Those are two main inflammatory markers that you see with those traumatic brain injuries. Being able to shift the inflammatory aspects of the cytokines and the microglia, you can start to repair some of those things that have actually been working against you. So there's multiple reasons I think it would be really beneficial for military personnel who are coming home. And we are actually working with some branches in the military right now.
Wow, it's so refreshing to hear so much data and such positive information. I know when I went to my neurologist, and blessings to him. He's doing the best he can with what he has. He's very, very allopathic, which is fine. Allopathic medicine definitely has a place. If I get in a car accident and I'm leaking blood, I want a good conservative allopathic doctor to stop the bleeding, keep me from going into shock. So it definitely has its place. But I got the vibe from him that either he didn't know enough on my diagnosis, which was ischemia.
Mhm.
He didn't know enough, or his hands were tied with what he was allowed or able to do. And obviously, when you get a diagnosis and having your doctor kind of hit you with a blank stare, kind of like Bambi in the lights, and you get a blank stare from your neurologist, it makes me say, I've got to do some research. I got to do some exploration. And so to hear you going into such detail about all the different ways that it's efficacious and it's moving the needle is really exciting. Maybe we could talk about that ischemia, which, as I understand it, is a lack of blood. The way he described it to me was neurological global ischemia, which means I was not getting oxygen to my small blood vessels due to a circulation issue. And so they're dying. And so literally parts of my brain are dying. And I feel it in the memory. I too am a Jordan who makes notes on my hands because I have to. And,
Right.
and I have all these workflows around it. I've got notepads all over the place. My note thing, literally, if you told me anything, I'd immediately get my phone, open up my notepad, and say it in the notepad. Because if I don't, it's gone. It's gone 5 seconds later. So maybe can you address ischemia, which is, I think, way more prevalent than a lot of people may know?
Absolutely. And it definitely is. It's also kind of a scary thing that we're seeing with long COVID too. But yeah, the ischemia is exactly that. That something's come up that's, impeding the blood flow through the brain. So having something like the photobiomodulation that can support that blood flow when you're not able to do this on your own, especially when you're using it consecutively day after day, you're starting to really improve that blood flow. It can help with angiogenesis so that you can start getting some more like possible blood vessels that are growing too, which can also be helpful for it. But another part is that it interacts with BDNF or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is kind of the growth factor in our brains. So it's what helps to create new neurons or synapses. So for some of those things that feel like they might be lost because of this ischemia that's been going on, there's actually a way that we can potentially repair it. And so all of that literature that you've ever seen that was like, our brains stop making new cells and, by the age of 40 or whatever it is, It's not true. We still have the BDNF that's in there. You still have the possibility of regrowing some of these pathways or repairing some of these areas to be able to regain that functioning again. So there's a lot of hope, which I think is definitely what people are looking for the most.
In circulation and energy, it allows the body, does it not? It allows the brain to do what it does. Magically, another part of the brain can pick up where one part is checked out and damaged beyond repair. The other part of that brain, if it has the energy
Right.
and the minerals and the nutrients and the water to do that, right? Because it's really we're talking about energy. We're talking about electricity, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So that's exactly what the importance of getting that proper blood flow so we can start delivering nutrients to these areas so they can start working as they're supposed to or compensating effectively for other areas.
And Michael J. Fox has done such a great job of highlighting this particular affliction, Parkinson's, and then of course there's multiple sclerosis. This particular family, they're similar. Yes, are they inflammatory type diseases?
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And so, the research out on Parkinson's is definitely somewhat conflicting. I think there still needs to be optimization for it. But some of the things that we have seen, and actually I'm starting to study with Dr. Ken Charlin in Arkansas, is looking at apathy in Parkinson's. Once you get some of these diagnoses, it makes it really challenging to start feeling quite as motivated as you did before. And so a lot of times people stop doing as many things or stop wanting to go out. And then, of course, that just builds on itself as well. So, really looking at kind of the apathy aspect. I'm definitely seeing with people who start using our helmet, they feel more energy. So, they want to go do those things that make them feel better, that are part of living life. I think that there's high chance for helping with MS. There's really not any studies that are out there yet, but we have had a couple of clients who come through who feel like they're doing better overall, that better stress resiliency, feeling just better in general. And I think that there will be a really good research that hopefully will come out soon, looking kind of at the impacts on photobiomodulation specifically with MS, because certainly that can be quite a debilitating disease.
What about the readings, Jordan? What are you looking for? There's MRIs, there's EEG. What types of readings should people get? And then what are you looking for, in terms of improvements?
Yeah, so kind of our main one that we focus on, and obviously it's my background as well. All of those letters that you brought up at the beginning, those are just two different organizations, BCIA and IQCB. BCIA focuses a lot more on neurofeedback and biofeedback certifications. IQCB focuses more on quantitative EEG or electroencephalography certifications. So I'm certainly coming from a biased perspective here, but we utilize EEGs a lot. They have really good temporal resolution, so we can kind of see how somebody's operating in the moment, getting a good idea of how their brains are operating when their eyes are open and how their brains are operating when their eyes are closed. Gives a really good full picture about what's kind of going on. So you might see things like with PTSD, where you're seeing these sort of overactivation in certain areas and that underactivation, like in the prefrontal cortex. So looking at potentially targeting those areas or, trying to help either calm them down or to help speed them up a little bit more. When we're looking at like Alzheimer's or dementia, we're seeing a lot more of this slow activity going on, which is where you get those cognitive impacts. So trying to help speed it up, like with that 40 hertz, can be something to help kind of get those connections back together. So especially in those pre and post, we're really looking to see about some of these improvements, like with the neurodegeneration. One thing that we see is improvements in peak alpha. Peak alpha just refers to sort of how we approach the world. So you want to be at a fast enough speed that we can kind of take in everything that's going on. You don't want to be too fast because you can end up more with that anxiety. You don't want it to be too slow because then you're not really processing what's going on around you. One of the things that's been thought of for years is that once somebody's peak alpha drops into that unhealthy slow range, there's nothing you can do to get it back. It's just you're in cognitive impairment and that's it. And that's just the way that people have been approaching this up until now. But it's been really amazing to see that using transcranial photobiomodulation can actually help to speed that peak alpha back up. So again, people are able to start processing and being engaged with their environment. So it's really neat to kind of see some of these old beliefs be refuted through using photobiomodulation.
Yeah, it seems like you can either spiral up or you can spiral down, and you need to get some beachhead, if you will. You need to get a couple of wins that give you that, ability, something to grab onto. I know there's times where I'm lit, and then there's times where I'm just down, and I notice I have to remember that it's chemical, because if I remember it's chemical, I sort of get out of myself and I look at myself. I become like a dispassionate observer. So I'm not on the ride, right? I'm not on that negative ride. So you don't get too dark. And what we're talking about here is pretty serious. Like we've got how many of our veterans are killing themselves every day.
Right.
This is brutal, like it's so sad. And if we can find some therapy for them, that's why this is so timely. This is so timely. Have there been any, one of the other things that I've been experimenting with, it's very challenging for me because I have trouble keeping my weight on. I've been trying to convert on and off through fasting, intermittent fasting, and through the ketone protocol. Are there any synergies between having the brain decide to use ketones rather than glucose with the light therapy?
Yeah, so there have been some studies that are starting to look more into this, obviously sort of specifically around diabetics, but I think there'll be more and more of these sort of just general wellness. But yeah, having that keto diet can be really anti-inflammatory for people. It can be helpful for a wide variety of conditions, including seizures, which is really interesting. So yeah, once you're already having a decrease in inflammation, it's just going to be boosting these benefits as well. They've shown in research that having more oxygenated blood cells have a bigger response to the photobiomodulation. So it all can
Ah.
kind of build on itself. If you're increasing the oxygenation anyway with photobiomodulation, it can be improving the benefits. But if you're also doing things like keto diet or other anti-inflammatory things, it can be really helpful.
That's fascinating. That, yeah, like the one feeds off the other, they go back and forth. The very definition of synergy, right? Like
Yeah.
one plus one is more than two because it's synergistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can really speak to how hard it is to come over to that ketone protocol because there is a time limit, a time where you're out of glucose and your body's saying, "Where is my sugar?" Right? And you keep giving it more fat and more protein. It's like, no, 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 that's not what I asked you for. Did I ask for protein? No. Did I ask for fat? No. I asked for sugar. And there's a time like I crash. Like I can turn that on, that monster, almost like a drug addict trying to get off like of an opiate. I can turn that on in 24 hours by just doing clean, just being clean all day, either a fast or meat and oil. And in 24 hours, I feel like a junk. I can't think, I can't move. So it's hard to get over to getting that body to run on the ketones. It really is. But this could be a really powerful way to keep the energy up while I'm trying to make that transition over to cleaner burning fuel.
Exactly, exactly. And once you get over that hump, it's not as hard as it seemed, but it's definitely that initial transition because it is. You're just totally changing the way that your body's using energy. I mean, that's a big shift to ask your body to do. But once it gets into it, then it definitely runs more efficiently in that way. And then, yeah, you have a myriad of health benefits from it. So I get it. But yeah, definitely having something like the helmet can be helpful. I mean, even with jet lag, we can use the helmet for that and that's, just transitioning from different time zones, working with an international company, they're jumping from different continents all the time. So having this to be supportive just from even that lack of sleep can be really helpful.
What about like uptake of nutrition? Because I know, like, if your cells aren't like if there's no, I guess there's that layer, that lipid around the cell, right? And if that doesn't have in and out, and you don't have clean autophagy and mitophagy, you're going to get more gunked up, right? You're not uptaking the. How does that work?
Yeah, yeah. So the more that you do have this, like you're saying, this gunked up, it is the cells being blocked from getting these nutrients that they need, which again does feed on itself in a negative cycle. Because once you have one of them blocked, you're going to start having the surrounding ones also be impacted as well. So having this, ATP able to come in and knock out that nitric oxide, then you have the nitric oxide in the blood vessels, so you can help with some of that dilation, then you're able to get more of that blood flow to knock out more of it. So that gunk that, you're mentioning, whatever it might be, whether protein aggregates and neurodegeneration or, any of these other potential markers, it can be really helpful for starting to flush them out. We think even that there could possibly be some support for the lymphatic drainage system, that
Wow.
system that works when we're sleeping to be able to clear out the gunk or anything else in our brains. So having this actual, improvement in the circulation may be also contributing to positive lymphatic drainage.
Wow. Now, do people have to wait for something to go wrong or to have a diagnosis or to have brain fog or any of the things that I that I have? Do you have to wait for that to get it, or can this be used as a preventive measure as well?
Yeah, definitely. You're going to get the best benefits from using it as a preventative measure. So the studies that they've looked at, with these poor mice that they, hit over the head or they inject
Oh,
them with toxins or whatever it might be to be able
yeah.
to test this. But they've shown that those that are using photobiomodulation ahead of time of any of these injuries or, like the MPTP, which is something similar to Parkinson's that you can inject, when they use photobiomodulation beforehand, they have less severe responses to like the concussions, less long lasting ones, and also a better rate of recovery overall. So using it preventatively is definitely a good thing. And one of the things that we know with Alzheimer's or dementia or a lot of these other diseases is things start way beforehand before you ever see the
Mm,
symptoms appear. If you
mm.
start addressing things at that point in time, that's how you can really have this impact. So while it's definitely useful still once you do have a diagnosis, I still think it can be helpful for either slowing down progression or just helping to, provide energy, like we had said, for doing things that you wanted to. Definitely using it ahead of time can be something that can really help with the outcomes. So people who have, known hereditary risk, I would definitely say it's a better thing to be doing it preventatively. Like I said, I'm in, my early 30s, but I've been using this helmet for over 2.5 years now because I know that I need to go ahead and be preventative since I've had some traumatic brain injuries in the past.
That's smart, very smart. Are there any counterindications? I know that there's a lot of individuality uh, at play here, and people need to kind of dial in what works for them. But are there any times you shouldn't use it?
Yeah, definitely the biggest one that we talk about is certainly active cancer. Because of the possibility of the angiogenesis, you could actually end up fueling potentially the tumor by creating more blood flow to this area. So while there is research that's being done right now, and I think that eventually it'll come out actually combining both photobiomodulation and radio frequency for tumors, we're just not at that point yet where we understand it well enough to know how it can, potentially be used helpfully without having negative drawbacks. The other one is with metal in the head. So outside of titanium, which does not have the same heating point, if people do have metal in their head for other reasons, either part of their skull or perhaps, that there's a shard that's been implanted in the head, we do, suggest using extra caution with that because there's a potential you could heat it. Outside of that, though, there's not really as many things. We'll always say for pregnant women to be cautious, but we certainly work with a lot of pregnant women as well. But yeah, the youngest age that I've worked with is a 1.5 year old, and the oldest person I've worked with is 99. So
Wow.
there's a lot of good variety in between. Most people are pretty safe.
But you weren't saying not to use it if you're a metal head, only if there's metal in the head.
Exactly, exactly. Totally fine if you're a
For
metalhead.
metalhead,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Just want to make sure. I want to clarify that, Jordan. Just want to make sure.
Absolutely.
So, like, we're not being prejudiced against metalheads at all.
Not at all.
What's your workflow look like? How do you use it? What's an average day in your life using the biomodulation?
Yeah, so in general, I usually use it in the morning. I'm really big. Like this morning, I have my protocol. I use a couple minutes of the glow protocol, which is just the constant light, and then a couple minutes of a version of our balance protocol, which is 14 hertz. It's something that's really helpful using it in the morning. As I mentioned, I don't really drink caffeine at all pretty much anymore.
Wow.
And so it can be something that'll get me through the rest of the day. So normally at 2 p.m. when we started this is a time that I might be a little bit more, fatigued or getting that slump that you get. I don't find that when I use the helmet in the morning. I also used it when I've just bonked my head. I have a very rambunctious dog that I really love, but I was recently chasing him around and trying to get something away from him and just hit my head on one of my countertops. So I just threw my helmet on right
Wow.
away. And then for the next couple of days to use it, I didn't experience any of those post-concussive issues. I felt it coming on when I hit my head,
Wow.
and that immediately really helped to mitigate it. But yeah, in general, obviously, I don't have to do that. So just using it in the morning has been really helpful for maintaining my energy.
By any chance, Jordan, do you have a helmet close by?
I do.
Yay. For the people who are watching us at unitedfightalliance.com and the go to the pod, if you're not, go to so it's unitedfightalliance.com, go to podcast, The Fighter in You. That's our podcast. You'll see lots of shows up there and just simply go to Jordan's and you can see the helmet. Let's take a look at that bad boy. Oh, there it
Yeah.
is. It looks like a bike helmet.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is actually the older version, and obviously I've decorated it with stickers, but
I
um,
love it.
but yeah, this is our original model that we had. So you can see inside, we have these are all the LEDs that are in here. And this one
Wow.
is more of the clinical model. It does have an ability to customize each of these different quadrants here, to be able to potentially target a certain region or to be able to maybe offset a stuck pattern. But yeah, it's incredibly comfortable and it comes with these pads that you can just stick in there so it sets on the head really nicely. This one is controlled by an actual controller, which maybe I can fully get out.
Totally. Let's check it
Um,
out. Look
which
at
is
that bad
here.
boy.
Our newer
Wow.
one, though, looks a lot cooler than this too, I will say. It's a lot sleeker of a design, but it's also controlled by an app. So for people who are more interested in that tech side of it, it's something that can be a little bit easier to manage. And I think most people do really great with the light helmet, which is our newest one. So yeah, we have some options based on people's needs and what they're trying to use it for. And obviously, I just keep it right here at my desk so I can just pull it out in the morning when I'm doing my emails or whatever else it might be. I
Is
would
it
recommend
portable?
meditating.
Like if I
What?
wanted to, sorry to interrupt you. Is it portable? Like if I wanted to use it like when I'm riding my bike or anything like that, is it portable or does it have to be near that head, the base?
So the light helmet, which is our new one, is definitely portable. It has a portable battery with it, so you can just stick it in your pocket and go right along on your bike ride.
That's great. That's
Mhm.
great. Well, this is just amazing science. Is there anything that I left off?
No, I think that really does cover it. It's a really amazing thing to be able to see again. I just really want to emphasize definitely that safety aspect. Like I said, working with such young ages, I mean, it's really clearly a safe tool to be able to use and designed for that home use. So just really wanting to bring that home that yeah, we made this so that people can feel comfortable using it themselves at home.
If people wanted to find out more about you, find out more about Neuronic, and find out more about, transcranial photo biomodulation itself, where would they go?
Yeah, you can visit us at neuronic.online, neuronic.online. We have a ton of information on there of different kinds of conditions. We have information on there about studies that are ongoing or ones that we've completed. There's information on there about me, as well as any of our devices or any of our packages that we offer. So it's a really good place to find kind of anything you might be looking for, and also just to look at some of those frequently asked questions. Also on our website, if you go on, you can even book a call directly through the website so that you can speak to someone as well.
Man, this has been so informative, so exciting. I know other people who are listening to this, for whatever challenges they may be having, are very, very curious now. And I hope they all head over to your website. And I really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, and this is giving us hope.
That's what we're here for. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jordan. The information, including but not limited to text, graphics, audio, images, and video contained in For the Fighter in You, is for informational purposes only. No material on our show is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment.